Do you know who doesn't burn out? People who know themselves and their limits well enough to ask for the right kind of help. There's a lot in that statement. People who know themselves and their limits well enough to ask for the right kind of help. If you unpack all that, you come to the same conclusion I did back at MIT when I was studying burnout in grad school. Everyone burns out. And some people, we call it burnout, and others tuning out, losing the plot, going numb, quiet quitting. We call it waking up one day and just realizing you haven't felt like yourself in a long, long time. And all those labels are the ones the work world hates. There are ways of burning out that the work world loves because companies quietly benefit from them. Like the opposite of quiet quitting is called self-erasure, identity burnout, overengagement. That's when you lose yourself in your work so completely that boundaries disappear. You pour in more hours, more emotional investment, more identity than is reasonably sustainable, often to the point where your sense of self becomes one with your job. Like I said, everyone burns out. And all of it's okay. It's perfectly human or imperfectly human, either way. During sales week, back in week 3, we talked about the trust building mindset, about how you can become a great salesperson by actively listening, by exercising empathy and curiosity and being transparent. When you think about self-care and how important it is for founders, for everyone really, you realize that the answer starts when you focus that trust building mindset on yourself, listening to your body, being curious about your own mental and emotional life, empathizing with yourself, which sounds a little too hippie for me, but really just means dealing with your own feelings and struggles with kindness and without judgment, and being transparent, which in this context means asking for help, even if it's the wrong kind of help, because you haven't yet figured out your borders. Point is always, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. Asking for help poorly leads to, eventually, to asking for help effectively. Like all skills, it's a journey. Second time this week without upbeat music. Welcome to bonus week, week 5. We're about to wrap up the whole thing tomorrow. So let's talk about something most founders ignore until it's too late. Kind of like this piece was. It should have been probably day 2. Founder self-care. Today's questions. 1, where are you running on empty and what's it really costing you? And 2, what's one boundary that you could set this week to protect yourself for the long haul? These questions matter. The first one, because it forces you to take an honest inventory of exactly how much you're running on empty. If you don't know where you're stretched too thin, you'll keep draining super skills 1 and 2. Focus on prioritization, on things that don't move the needle. And the second question matters because it's about agency. Most founders wait for permission to take care of themselves. You don't need permission. You shouldn't wait for it. Setting a single boundary, no matter how small, can be the difference between flaming out and lasting longer than you expected. Let's pretend you're the kind of broken that doesn't prioritize self-care. You don't have the time for it. All you care about is the business. That's a very special kind of broken. And to you, I say, self-care is about operationalizing your own well-being so you don't become the bottleneck in your business. If you're not going to do it for the right reasons, do it for the business. Day 34, part 2 of Lunch Break Millionaire, where we turn whatever you're eating for lunch into an Ivy League MBA degree. Doesn't even matter what day of the week it is. We're talking about today's Ivy League MBA skill, self-care. So, tacos. Let's jump into how you do it. And this applies to your hustle, your day job, anything you take seriously in life. You start by noticing the warning signs: fatigue, irritability, brain fog, the sense that you're always behind. You pick one small, non-negotiable habit. Maybe it's a real lunch break now that you're running out of my awful content. So pick a habit and lose all the screens you might rely on during that habit. Like for lunch, just do food and a walk. Or set a hard stop for work. If you have a 9 to 5, it doesn't have to be 5. Maybe it's 7 or 8 or 9. Notice I'm not being judgy, because if it's worth doing poorly. What else? Maybe do a daily check-in with someone who's genetically wired to call you on your bullshit. The kind of ask that's really good at helping you set a boundary and treat it like a client meeting. Immovable, important, not up for debate, that kind of thing. What else? If you're a nerd like me, maybe you build your own founder-flounder dashboard. One, because it rhymes, and that's, dad funny. And two, because it lets you track your energy the way you track the stuff you think is cool. Your engagement metrics, your CAC, customer acquisition cost, your LTV, your customer lifetime value. This stuff we talked about way back on like day 4 when we were writing our business plan. The KPIs in the dashboard would be stuff like, did you sleep? Did you exercise? Are you eating healthy? Are you connecting with that special disagreeable someone who loves you and actually gets it? Self-care is super important because everyone deserves it, even if your dad thinks it sounds wussy. And second, for you alpha nut jobs, if you're running on empty, your business will too. Burnout, super common, totally natural. Sign from God that you need to work on super skill 3, delegation. Not the way you think, not like delegate all the stressful stuff to your team. What I mean is everything you've learned about delegation of tasks, apply that to your emotional labor. That means you need to find a peer, a coach, a therapist, a friend who can help you process the hard stuff. You get exactly 0 points for suffering in silence. The founders who seem to tap into seemingly bottomless wells of energy, they're the ones who build support systems for their emotional tasks as deliberately as they build automation for their repetitive tasks, as deliberately as they build their product. Okay, here's an exercise. Tonight, write down 3 things that drained you today and 3 things that filled you up. Super simple. Tomorrow, do more of the latter and less of the former. It's that simple. Small wins every day. Over time, those micro habits will compound into resilience, into that bottomless well of energy. That's how you hustle smarter, wiser. That's how you hustle wiser. This is day 34, part 3 of Lunch Break Millionaire. This is the segment where we hashtag build in public. Okay. 2 words, self-care. 3 words, working on it. I did the exercise yesterday. I asked myself where I'm running on empty and what it's really costing me. And my answer, after 5 weeks of constant content creation, was, well, it's costing me time with my boys. That's why I drop content like shows on Netflix once a year in chunks. If you want to, do them all at the same time, you don't have to keep waiting. So that the rest of the year, I can reduce the cost to these guys. And question number 2 was, what's one boundary you could set this week to protect yourself for the long haul? 3 words, don't eat alone. The larger message here is that I'm just like everyone else. I too have burnt out in the past, and unless I'm diligent, unless I focus and prioritize my physical and emotional life, I risk burning out again. And that's okay. Join me tomorrow for the dramatic series finale.